Coach, you got a little bit of an extended break here. How has that benefited the team and what you can do with them during this time?
It's certainly been nice to get back on the training field for a period. We've had a few areas of our game that I feel needed just polishing up a bit. Certainly for the guys on the back of a couple of difficult results, it gave us a moment or two just to regroup. Physically, we've had one or two difficulties, some injuries that are now in a much better place, and I think mentally it gave us an opportunity to look back on one or two of the difficulties and maybe try and just work our hardest to keep those difficulties at bay.
With those two losses, I'm sure you got the team's full attention. Are they chomping at the bit to get back out there Wednesday?
Well, you would hope so. I'm certainly seeing all the right signs. We've got an extremely competitive group. I think there are one or two guys that have seen an opportunity. There are other guys that I believe have seen that they need to do more, and ultimately we've had a good week or 8 days of hard work, and I think it's given everybody a new perspective.
Can you speak to how good Rios has been this year and just, what he brings to your team and why specifically he's been good?
I think he's been absolutely outstanding. It's sometimes tough to really gel quickly with a group, especially as a forward. You that difference maker in front of goal. His hold-up play, his determination to try and maintain the ball for the group, his energy to help the group when we don't have the ball, just his general attitude daily has been magnificent. And then of course on top of that you've got exceptional finishing, which is I think put him into the second spot at the moment in the Golden Boot race, which is a terrific position to be in. So for many different reasons he's been a wonderful addition to the group, and we're of course delighted to have him here.
Even with this difficult stretch, you still feel like this team has a really good run in them in the last half of the season. What makes you think that?
Well, I don't think we've played anywhere near to our potential. There have been, I think, some difficulties to deal with weekly at the club and daily for the players, and maybe one or two of those to just mention. We've had three excellent forwards come in, but one of those has not really seen the field an awful lot in Cameron Lancaster. So we're really looking forward to a prolonged period with Cameron in the team. We've seen a brief insight into what he's capable of, but to see him and Daniel up front regularly would be wonderful. Secondly, I think the guys have found that being under the sort of microscope they've been under, whether it's MLS, whether it's the future, whether it's what happens to USL with us next year, they're all emotional things that are very tough to try and contend with. I have a much greater appreciation for the sides that have gone through this process before now, and I never realised just what difficulties you can run into. And I think the second half of the season now gives the players just a little bit of experience to draw on. They've got 17, 18 games under their belt now. They've dealt with some problems, they've dealt with some pressures. I've moved the side around a little bit in the early stages of this season. Expect the side to stay a little bit more stable, and there's a bit more continuity in the group. I think everyone's had a great opportunity to show what they're about. The main purpose of this second half of the season is really to bag as many points as possible, and for some of those guys to push on and make a real claim for what comes down the line.
How much have you leaned on coaches that have been through this transition? You said you have a greater respect for them now. I'm sure that's a complex issue, but just how complex is it, I guess?
Well, I'm not going to go into it too much,
right.
But just daily for the players. Forget about what my role is or anyone else at the club, but daily for the players, they're having to deal with the expectation of a very good side. They're dealing with the uncertainty of a future, and they're chasing a dream. And those three issues in the main are exceptionally tough emotional problems to overcome. In terms of me speaking to other people, I've not got on the phone to anyone who's been through this before. But last year, I look at Cincinnati's scenario and situation, And you know, we were compared to them at the start of the year. There's some very, very big differences that I think are playing into the way that maybe the season has unfolded for us and the way it unfolded for them. And the main one for me is that there are a lot of players in that group that knew their future. There were a lot of players that had an eye towards what was going to happen in MLS. And did they all go there? Did they all, or have they all ended up being a feature in that group? Probably not. But when you're playing every week and you know where you're going, what you're going to achieve, then I think that can be a much more calming feeling than what is my future? Where am I going to be? So I think comparisons are tough. What they achieved was magnificent. What we're trying to achieve is for our own history and future. And as I said, we're looking at a lot more stabilising, maybe a lot more continuity in this group coming towards this second half of the season.
Obviously, Ken's been struggling with injuries for a bit, and then you had 4 injuries against Louisville. How are those guys looking ahead of this weekend's match?
The injury report that's coming in is getting better and better. We've got 2 of those guys available for us towards Wednesday's game. 2 of them that won't be. But when I look down the line, and we've got a fabulous game coming up at home at Titan Stadium that I'd love to have all of those guys available for. I think if we look at Derek, it's going to be beyond that game. But the other guys I think have all got a chance. So we'll deal with this game in Memphis first of all. It's nice to have a couple of players back. We've added a player to the group in the meantime, and I certainly think that with this rivalry with Memphis, they'll want to come out of the blocks. No game at the weekend after it being cancelled, and certainly put the record straight after getting beat at our place. So we're under no illusions this is going to be a tough task. But in terms of injuries, I'm certainly looking further down the line at some of the players that could be back, and to maybe give us a little bit of boost when we come back home again in 10 days' time.
Does the break, obviously before this Memphis match and then after it, does that help, or is it more of a scenario where you'd rather be playing every week and keep that form up?
I think the break that we've just had has been a big help. As I said, there were some I think some physical issues as well as trying to piece ourselves back together again mentally. Going in front and then losing a game is never easy, especially against the champions and a side that we know we're going to be fighting for possibly silverware. So I think it's given everyone a moment just to regroup. Could we do with a game come Saturday? In an ideal world, yeah. I'd have said yes. We've had enough time off. But as we've seen before, the schedule can be a little bit lopsided. We've gone from being a couple of games in front of teams to now going behind in the schedule. So, look, we all know our challenge right now. That is to perform on a more consistent basis. For the side maybe to be a tad more stabilised, and certainly to bag as many points in this second half of the season as we possibly can. No different to anyone else. Everyone else will be saying the same things. I certainly feel as though we've got more to come.
Looking at Memphis, I mean, you've already played them once this season, and then from that match and the rest of the matches that you've seen of them, what are you expecting on Wednesday?
I mean, they had a terrific win against Hartford in their last home game. You can only look back at the last game you've played, and those feelings will be prevalent in the way that the players are training and the confidence they have around the place. With their game called off at the weekend, that's what they'll be leaning on. It's an arena, a stadium not dissimilar to our own. I think the dimensions will be slightly different, but they get great support. They'll be, I would think, foaming at the mouth to try and get at us and keep on their positive run. And we'll be doing likewise though, because we need to get ourselves back on track So I would imagine that the opening 10 or 15 minutes will be fast and furious, and two teams that want to set their stall out and have got in two maybe different ways them to finish their season off very well and to get themselves in a playoff spot. For us, we're obviously chasing down silverware, and I would think both teams are going to be well and truly up for this one.
Thank you.
Coach, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.